What I have in front of me are two of the Exo Mtn Gear K4 packs. The brown one to my left, this is actually a prototype model. And then this green one to my right, this is the production model. So if you were to go and buy a K4 pack system, this is actually the pack that you would get. The prototype version was gifted to me for me to use last season in the 2022 hunting season. So all of my hunting experience is with this pack, which is why this pack is still bloody. I haven't washed the blood off. And that's why this pack over here, which is the production model, which I just got like 3 weeks ago, is like brand new. So in this video, I'm not going to talk about my experience with the production model because frankly, I have no experience with the actual production model out hunting, but I have all of my hunting experience with the prototype. And so in this video, again, it's going to be a little bit longer. And so I want to run you guys through the timelines of what I'm going to cover in this video. That way, if you're only interested in one topic, you can just skip to that timestamp and just go along with your day. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is just the overview of the K4 pack system from Exo. After that, I'm going to go into my experience with the prototype, run you guys through my 2022 fall season with the pack, give you guys an insight as to when and how I used it. That way you guys know how much experience I got with the K4 prototype. After that, we will talk about the differences between the prototype and the production models. And then after that, we'll just conclude it, give you guys my final thoughts on Exo's new K4 pack system, and that'll conclude the video. So without further ado, in traditional form, Exo has one frame, and then they offer you a handful of different bag sizes. So I went with the 5,000 bag size for both the prototype and the production model. The reason why I went with the 5,000 is because I think for the vast majority of people watching this and the vast majority of hunters out there, that 5,000 bag from Exo is that do-it-all bag. And then last, regardless of what bag size you go with, Exo, they offer different attachments that just work with all the bags. Like they have their little pullouts, they have their little hip belt pouches, and they have their new Nalgene bottle holster, which I really like. But we'll dive into that at the end of the video. For now, I'm going to hop into my personal experience with the K4 prototype and walk you guys through my 2022 hunting season, just to give you guys a better understanding of what I actually accomplished with this pack. So I first got this pack in early September, and the first hunt I took it on was just a squirrel hunt down in Oregon. It was like a squirrel / bear hunt, but we didn't really shoot a bear, so we were just out there hunting squirrels. And that was my first run with it. Again, since we're just small game hunting, we're not really hunting or packing out anything super heavy. And so under moderate to light loads, I really had no issues with the frame at all. Like the frame felt good, lumbar pad was solid, the hip belt was solid, there was no slipping, shoulder straps were good, load lifters worked, everything about the pack just performed, no complaints there. But again, a pack of this caliber is not tested by light or moderate loads. It's tested by heavy and super heavy loads. And so we're not really gonna dive too much into that squirrel hunt. After that, my buddy Nate actually shoots a spike bull elk during archery season, and he calls me up. We get over there, and it's a spike elk, so it's not the biggest bodied elk out there, but it's still an elk, heavier than squirrels. Fortunately for us, we were able to drive the truck like 200 yards above where the elk died. And so our pack out with Nate's spike bull elk wasn't very far, nor was it really anything super tedious, but it was finally a chance for me to put some type of heavier load in the K4 pack system. And so we loaded it up, and again, it's only like 200 yards from the elk to the truck, but from the elk to the truck, it's all uphill. And so we did that twice or 3 times. Pack felt great, nothing super complicated, nothing really stood out in terms of uncomfort or anything like that. The pack just performed solid. Fast forward after that, we go into the high country, which we spent a week up there with Nate. I loaded my pack, my K4 prototype, 7 days worth of gear, 7 days worth of food, spent 7 days up there. I ended up shooting a bear, or ended up shooting at a bear. Didn't end up getting him, unfortunately. Biggest bear of my life. What would have been a really good test for the K4, it didn't happen just because we didn't get the bear. But again, simply for the fact that we had 7 days worth of gear and food on my back, it really did put some perspective into how the K4 was going to handle heavy loads. So even like at 60, 65 pounds worth of gear, I had no issues with the pack. It was just solid. And so up until this point, I feel like I haven't really gotten to really test the K4 packs. I've had heavy loads in it, but I haven't had to go distance. That is until modern rifle deer season here in Washington. On opening day, I was fortunate enough to harvest my mule deer buck, shot him, dropped him, and basically where I shot him from camp, it was about 4 miles, if I had to guess. 4 miles, not flat, 4 miles up and down ridges and mountains. Packing out that deer back to camp, it was just enough of terrain to really let me, you know, work the pack, work the frame, really get this frame to fit me right. And plus the loads were pretty heavy. But this is kind of where I ran into my first and only issue with the K4. So this is not my first time using a backpack system where their hip belts are a little bit wider or taller. And so in the past, when I've used a pack that had a taller hip belt, I've always had that issue of that lower hip belt pinching this muscle on my side of my leg. So when I go to walk, because under heavy loads, you're cinching that hip belt super tight so that the pack doesn't slip off of you. When I do that, it cinches this muscle and blood just can't go down that muscle. And so what happens? When you're walking around, your leg starts to fall asleep. And so with the K4, they redesigned the hip belt, whereas like the K3 and the K2s were pretty short. With the K4s, they made it taller. So this is not a K4 issue. This is just how my body works. My body is not compatible with these taller hip belts. But nonetheless, to get back on track, it wasn't as bad as some of the other packs that I've tried in the past. It was just enough for me to notice that that issue was there and that I can't do these taller hip belts. It was just confirmation for me saying, hey, your body is not compatible with these taller hip belts. Other than that, that pack out with my deer back to camp, it was flawless. Like shoulder straps were good. I did not experience any slipping because that was the issue that I had with the K3 system from Exo. With the K3 system, I had a lot of slipping issues, but with the K4, I think they made it a goal to address that slipping issue. That's why they redesigned the lumbar pad and redesigned the hip belt like they did. The lumbar pad is a much denser foam, which is honestly, my opinion, the foam that they should have went with in the K3 anyways. But now with the K4, they have it, so I can't complain about it. So if you're going from K3 to K4, they beefed up the foam on the lumbar pad and they made the waist belt a little bit taller. After my deer hunt, I still took this bag or pack on a couple different hunts, but we didn't shoot anything, so I'm not going to cover that. The next big thing for me is I actually end up shooting my biggest bull elk during rifle season here in Washington. If you hunt Washington, you know how hard these Washington elk hunts are. And so over the counter public land, I shoot just a unbelievable bull. And fortunately for me, I had my whole family there to pack out, but I ended up caping this bull out because I'm doing a shoulder mount. So I loaded my frame up with the hide, the skull, the head, and the antlers. And when you have an antler just kind of like not close to your body, what tends to happen is it kind of tries to drag you backwards, but just because there's so much weight on the antlers that's far away from your center of gravity, that like you're really constantly like trying to hold yourself forward like this so that you don't lean backwards and just tip over backwards. And so this was definitely the heaviest load of my life, not just for the K4, of my life. And I got to test it on the K4. And once again, under these heavier loads, the hip belt with that pinching issue was there, and it was a lot more prominent than on my deer pack out just because it was heavier. So I really tried to cinch this hip belt down. But again, the issue of slipping was no longer there. I never had an issue with slipping. It was just the idea that I couldn't move my legs if I didn't release the pack for a little bit, right? So I would walk maybe like 30 yards. My legs would be falling asleep. I would have to like shrug up my pack, release that pressure off of that muscle, let blood go back down to my legs, and then let the pack sit back down into its normal place, and then hike, and then repeat that process. And so again, some of you might be like, well, if that's the case, then I don't want the K4 pack. Well, this is the thing though. This is a me issue. The vast majority of people that I've talked to that have used the K4 or just packs that have a bigger hip belt, they don't have this issue. Fortunately for them. Unfortunately for me, just with how my body works or my anatomy, if the pack sits where it's supposed to be, I have that pinching issue of this muscle. If I raise the pack up off of that muscle, the top part of the hip belt digs into the lower part of my ribs. And so it's like, if it's digging into my ribs, like I can't move anywhere without it being uncomfortable or even painful. And so if I let the pack sit back down, I deal with that issue of not letting blood go down to my legs. And so to me, it's just like a lose-lose situation with these taller hip belts. But the reason why I bring it up is because, again, I'm being honest with my experience here, but I'm saying that as just a nuance and just a heads up, more to say for you, just so that if you do end up buying a pack, I'm not going to say that it's going to happen to you because everybody's body is different, but it's just something for you to look for if you do end up purchasing a K4 pack. Other than that little issue of pinching, I really have no complaints about the K4. So fast forward, like what, 2 weeks after I packed out my Washington bow, I head down to Oregon, opening day down there. I end up shooting a bull in Oregon as well, my first ever Roosevelt elk. And again, the pack out from the elk to my car wasn't far, but in Oregon on the coast, it is just so thick and nasty that it makes your pack out pretty brutal in terms of just trying to maneuver your way through all of that growth. And so I load up my pack with the head and just a smaller load of meat, and I do that first solo trip. It only took me 20 minutes to get back to the truck, but I was just going through brush. And the reason why I bring up this short pack out is because when you're under a lot of brush and there's just so much sticks and twigs, what happens is you're torquing your body in all sorts of directions. And if you have a pack that won't flex according to how you move your body, it's miserable. But with this K4, with how they design it, there's enough flex in the frame that when you go to bend over or move around, maneuver, the pack moves with you. But at the same time, it's solid and it has enough structure to the point where it doesn't just fold under heavy loads. So it's like a win-win situation. The pack frame itself is strong enough to withstand heavy loads, but it's also flexible enough that when you go to move around thick brush, like you're moving logs out of the way, you're moving brush out of the way, it moves with your body so you're not restricted on your movement. That's something that I think separates a lot of these high-end frames from a lot of low-end frames. A lot of low-end frames, they can only do one or the other. They can either haul super heavy loads really good, but they restrict your body movement, or they don't haul heavy loads well, but they move with your body very good. But that's why I feel like these high-end frames are so good, because they can do both. They can handle heavy loads without folding under heavy loads, and they can also move with your body to not restrict your movement. I feel like that's really what separates high-end packs from low-end packs. And so anyway, fast forward like 2 days after I shoot my bull elk, my brother in Oregon also shoots a bull elk. And again, this pack out is nothing crazy. We were fortunate enough to shoot this bull in a clear cut versus the reprod. So the clear cut's a lot easier going. And we had a whole crew there. We all went up there, loaded up the pack, went down, and I never had an issue on that pack out. Granted, my pack wasn't as heavy. That's basically my experience with my K4 5000 prototype in a nutshell. Of course, if you watch the 2022 hunting season videos on my channel, you guys have seen me using this pack, and some of you have figured it out. You guys were like, hey, I see you running that new K4 prototype, and you guys were right. I just had to keep it kind of on the down low because Exo, when they gave these prototypes out to the 150 people or something like that, they kind of wanted us to keep it on the down low. And so there you go, cat's out of the bag. Yes, I used the K4 5000 pack system for the vast majority of my 2022 hunting season, and everything about the pack is great. The only issue that I personally had was just that hip belt either pinching my muscle or digging into my lower ribs when I would go to lift the pack up and release pressure off of that muscle. So now that you know my experience with the K4 prototype, I'm gonna bring you guys close and we're gonna lay these two packs side by side, and I'm gonna walk you guys through the differences between the prototype and the production model and give my thoughts on it. So once again, the brown one, this pack right here, this is the prototype model, and the green one right here, this is the production model. So if you were to buy the pack, the green one is the one that you would get. So the first thing that we're gonna cover between the prototype and the production model is the lid. So on the prototype, what they did was they put a front zipper instead of your rear zipper on the back. I personally did not like this front zipper. And so this front zipper, not only is it on the front, but they also added this flap, and this flap actually got really annoying because when you go to like just use this, like it'll just catch, and it really made the usability of this zipper just a little bit less functional. And so as you can see here on the production model, it's not on the front. This is actually basically what I would call the K3 lid, if you're familiar with the K3. So if you flip it on the back side, the zipper to the main lid is here facing the frame, and there's dual pockets. So there's a small pocket up here for like your wallet, keys, or any small items. And then this again is the zipper to the main lid. This was the first thing I told Mark when I sent him my feedback. I told Mark, I was like, hey man, the K4 prototype lid is not the way to go. This front zipper, it wasn't really there, and this flap right here isn't really necessary. And I just simply prefer the K3 lid that had a smaller pocket on top and the bigger lid on the bottom, and also have the zippers on the frame side versus the front of the bag. And so that's the first thing that I'm gonna cover. I think that the production model lid is the way to go. I'm glad that they went back to this. So that said, I'm gonna take off the lids, and so that we can dive into the actual bags themselves. So for me, it's a +1 on the production model lid. Now we are to the main body. If you have, or you are familiar with the Exo Mtn Gear K3 4800, the K4 5000 bag is essentially identical, just with a little bit of changes here and there. So both the prototype 5000 and the production 5000 are more or less identical, but there are a little bit of differences here and there. So on both the prototype and production model, you have 2 straps going on the front here. So for the prototype, it's these 2 straps right here that go along the front, so you can strap your bow or strap other items. Same thing here on the production model. And then on both the production and the prototype model, you have a full length horseshoe zipper, meaning you can unzip this flap here and go into the main bag. Same thing with this prototype here. And not only do you go into the main body of the bag there, but along that flap that I just opened on both the K4 prototype and production model, you have a stretchy material on the front here. And so you have like this slim pocket on the outside of this flap, right? So you have a pocket on the flap outside, and then you go into your main compartment through the horseshoe zipper. The other minor difference between prototype and production model is this little pocket right here on this back side of this flap. So on the prototype, you have a zippered compartment here, but here they used the mesh material. On the production model, they used this water resistant nylon material. I personally prefer the nylon water resistant material here. It just adds a little bit more security to whatever items you want to put in here, especially if they're prone to water. So again, they both have that pocket. This one, prototype model, just has it with mesh. Production model has it with nylon. And again, +1 to the production model. I think this is better than the mesh here. And then if we just go on the inside is just one big room. Like there's not really anything in there. It's just one big compartment so that you can put your stuff in there. And then on both the K4 prototype and the production model, they just have these little tabs sewn to the side here where you can attach their swing out pockets or their stash pockets. There's one on this side, and there's one on here. You can see I have my little clip there for my accessory, and I'm pretty sure, yeah. So here's one on the K4 production model, and here's one on the other side of the K4 production model here. So that's the main meat of the bag. You access it through this horseshoe zipper, and you have that little zipper pouch right behind or right underneath this flap, and then you have this outer material flap to store like a rain jacket or some quick access item. The biggest thing that I would say changed from the K3 4800 to the K4 5000 is the 2 side pockets, or the spotting scope pockets as some of you would call. And so again, on the sides here, there's a top buckle and a bottom buckle. It's the same on the left side, top buckle, bottom buckle. Same thing on the production, on the side here, top buckle, bottom buckle. On the other side, same exact thing, identical, top buckle, bottom buckle. So normally with a K3, what you would do is you accessed this spotting scope pocket through the top, through a little cinch on top. But with the K4, instead of accessing it from the top through that cinch, they've actually just made it a zipper. And so if you had a spotting scope, you would zip it in or zip it out, and you can shove your spotting scope in here. And it's the same exact thing on this side, right? Instead of accessing it through the top, through that cinch, it's just zipper. Put a spotting scope in here, put whatever you want to put in here, zip it shut. Again, on the prototype, what they did was they sewed a flap over the zipper. And again, this flap just became more annoying than anything, because when you go to like access your spotting scope and you zip this up and down, it'll actually, like the zipper will actually catch on this flap a lot. On the production model, if we look at those spotting scope pockets on the sides, you can see that there's no flap. So again, it's not like the K3 where you access it from the top. You access the spotting scope pocket through a zipper, but there's no flap to interfere with your zipping, which I think that this is the better way to go. It's just a cleaner design, and it's a much more efficient and functional design versus the prototype where they had this flap. And so they're removing excess material, extra weight, and they're also making the pack more functional at the same time. So it's a win-win in my book. So again, you have a spotting scope pocket on this side, and you have the same exact thing on the other side, where you also access through a zipper instead of the cinch cord on top like the K3 4800. So all of the Exos that I've been familiar with always have this outer pocket for like a water bottle like this. But with the K4, what they've changed is it's actually two pockets. So you have one big pocket here where I just put the water bottle, but you also have a second pocket right here that's angled towards your hand when you're wearing it. So when you're wearing it, this angle is easier to access because it's at an angle. When you go out back to reach, you can pull it out easier and you can put it back in easier. But if you want more security, you could put it into your regular pouch here instead. I think this is the better design to go. Just having two pockets instead of one just allows for easier access first with this cut angled pocket here, and then whatever else you want to put in here, like that's on you. And this is the same on the other side. So again, you have the big pocket here, and then you have that smaller angled pocket just sewn on the outside of that one. And then last, you know, in typical Exo fashion, they have a roll top design for the top. So you can access the bag through the horseshoe zipper, or you can go through from the top with a roll top design here. And then just like the K3 4800, right up against the frame, you have a dedicated like wet sleeve, like a water bladder sleeve. So this right here is separated from the main compartment through this water resistant nylon material. So if you have a water bladder or wet clothes, you can put it in here and not have to worry about that stuff seeping into the stuff that you have in your actual bag. So that water bladder sleeve is like right here, cut in between the frame and the bag. But again, it's like its own little waterproof compartment, so you don't have to worry about that stuff seeping onto the frame or seeping onto the stuff that you have inside your actual main body of the bag. Like the bag design is pretty similar to the K3 4800 if you're familiar with that. I'm just going to move the K4 prototype off the table because I think from here everything about the K4 prototype and production model are pretty similar. And so to remove the frame from the bag for like packing out meat, you don't have to undo your load lifters. And with the K3, they had a big old flap here, but with the K4, they actually just changed it to two little flaps. So if we go here, so I'm just going to remove the load lifters so you guys can see this better. So if you remove the load lifters, you come here. We're going to pull this strap. This strap is for the lid, by the way. You go here, pop this Velcro loose, and you're going to just loop it through that slide right there. Same thing up here. And once you do that, the pack separates, or the bag separates from the frame. And again, I'm not going to get too technical as to like how they designed the K4 frame, because that's Exo's place. That's not really my place. I'm just here to show you the overview of the pack. Again, you have 2 straps here so that when you go and lay the meat on here, you can extend these straps and then cinch the meat onto the frame using these 2 straps here. On this top up here, this is actually how you adjust the shoulder harness. So you can see if you need the shoulder straps to be taller, you would just simply pop this piece right here through this gap right here, and you would just replace it into whichever height you want. You can make it taller, you can make it shorter, depends on you. Again, you can learn how to fit the Exo properly if you just go look at Exo's videos. I'm not the guy to do that. The other thing that I want to talk about is how they attach their accessories to the hip belt. And so instead of having that traditional band of Velcro, like how they did on the K3 and the K2, they've actually went to a MOLLE system. And so all of the attachments now, like this hip belt right here, is attached through MOLLE. And again, you can learn how to do this by looking at Exo's videos. I'm just showing you the differences here. I'm not necessarily doing a how-to video, it's just an overview. And so they have this little cut MOLLE here for like your hip belt pouches. I'm pretty sure they're coming out with other accessories. But the newest thing they have is they have a cut piece of Velcro right here, right behind this square piece on the hip belt. And this is actually designed for a Nalgene holster. And this Nalgene holster is actually something that I got to test out on my prototype. So you can see, yeah, it's still super bloody. But this is where your hip belt goes. And right here, this is where your Nalgene goes. So hip belt, Nalgene. Hip belt, Nalgene. And I actually really like this Nalgene holster or Nalgene holder. It just makes it way more convenient. You don't have to worry about reaching back over here. And I noticed that when you put the Nalgene in this location that Exo did, the weight of that 32 ounce or 48 ounce Nalgene just kind of transfers to your hip belt anyway. So you don't have an awkward lump on your pack or anything. It just transfers so well onto the hip belt and onto your hip bones, and you don't really feel the weight of that Nalgene. And then of course, to just put the bag back together, it's pretty simple. You just tuck these 2 frames, the top pieces of these frames, back into that little sleeve there, and then you just insert this piece of Velcro through that little gap on this little tri-glide or tri-slide, whatever you call this. And then you have this Velcro piece where you just simply reattach onto the frame. So once you do that, we're going to rethread the lid strap. So this is the lid strap, just goes back through here. And then once you do that, you just reattach your load lifters if you decide to unthread them, just like I did. And then boom, once you do that, your pack is ready to go. This is the thing I love about the Exos, man. Like everything about the Exos are just so easy to use, just so functional at the same time. And I never feel like I'm spending too much time messing around with my pack. I think that's what really separates Exo from other packs, is their ease of use, their functionality, and just the overall simplicity of the design. On the shoulder straps, they do have a MOLLE panel on both shoulder straps here where you can attach some of Exo's accessories. I'm pretty sure I've seen a little Garmin InReach pouch holder that you can attach to here, and maybe like a reed holder or something along. I don't really know what Exo is coming out with, but that's something that I forgot to touch on. They did add a little piece of MOLLE here on the shoulder strap so you can add accessories on here. That's pretty much the K4 5000 pack system. I just think it's a pack that is simple to use but functional, and that's really all you can ask for at the end of the day. You just need a pack that functions. And again, I've said this in the past and I'll say it again, when it comes to simplicity, I don't think there's another pack out there that beats the Exo. To detach the bag from the frame, you can't beat the Exo. But again, that doesn't diminish the Exo from functionality. It's simple to use and it's quick and easy to use, but at the same time, it's still very functional. And I think that's really Exo's niche, where they really stand out amongst the pack market. Their packs are so simple to use, but they don't compromise on functionality. I think that's where Exo really shines. There's other companies out there where they're not as easy to use, but they have a lot more feature-rich accessories, where if you really like a lot of accessories, like there's other pack companies out there. But in this case, we're talking about Exo, and so I gotta give them their credit. They really focus on designing packs where it's easy to use. Anybody can take this pack and figure it out on their own. They don't need to be reading an owner's manual. That's the beauty of the Exo Mountain Gear system. And surprisingly, the K4 is just more simple to use than the K3 4800, which when I did the K3 4800 review, I said that that pack was the most simple pack to use. And I don't know how Steve did it over at Exo, but he did it in the K4. In my honest opinion, the K4 5000, or I guess the K4 lineup in general, is easier to use than the 4800 or the K3 lineup in general, which is so crazy to say, because it's like when you think that there's no way a pack can be even more simple, Exo just finds a way to make it even more simple. So I got to give them their credit there. This is just my personal experience and my personal review of my experience with the K4 prototype and what I liked that they changed from the prototype to the production model. So if I missed something and you still have questions, just leave a comment. I'll try my best to respond to as many questions as I get. If I don't get to you in the comment section, send me an email. An email is a lot easier for me to track. Or the smarter thing is just contact Exo Mountain Gear directly. Mark and Jake, two awesome dudes. They will take care of you over at Exo Mountain Gear. So that's my review of the K4 5000 from Exo Mountain Gear. Hopefully this review helped you out in terms of making you jump on the K4 train or making you go somewhere else. Either way, I'm not here to sell you the K4 5000 pack system. The point of this video is just to give you as much information about the K4 5000 pack system so that you can make an informed decision as to which route or which pack is the best for you.